time with a roll call. Mark Arias.
Here.
Dominic Browse.
Present.
Tara Briscoe.
Present.
Jed Cole.
Present.
Benji Gomez.
Here.
Pete Gretzinger.
Present.
Ray Jefferson. Kim Kazanis.
Here.
Jason Ramos.
Here.
Chase Smith.
Here.
And Jeremy Vickers.
Here.
We will now call the meeting of the Waco Plan Commission on June 22nd, 2021 to order. It is 7:16 p.m. On March 16th, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to the state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16th until further notice or until the state disaster declaration expires. In accordance with social distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, the Waco Plan Commission meeting will be closed to the public attending in person. This meeting is being broadcast live at www.wccc.tv. The audio is being recorded and the recording will be available to the public. According to the Attorney General, governmental bodies must offer members of the public alternative methods of communication with their public officials. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to speak by phone on public hearings were required to register with planning staff by 12 p.m. on June 22nd, 2021. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our May 13th, 2021 and May 25th, 2021 work session and business meetings. Are there any changes or additions? Seeing none, they stand approved as written. We'll now move on to our public hearing agenda items, beginning with our subdivisions. Mr. Peters, would you present those that we have before us today?
Yes, sir. We do have two subdivision plats, each having a different recommendation, so we'd like to take each one separately. The first one is, this is a public hearing on a final plat and construction plans of the Saddle Creek 2 addition phase 2, 3, and 4. Staff has reviewed these plats and construction plans and recommends approval with conditions on this one.
Thank you. We will now open our public hearing on this plat. We do not have any scheduled representatives or individuals to speak. Are there any questions from commissioners for city staff? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion on this item?
I move that we recommend approval with conditions based on staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith of approval, second by, I saw Mr. Cole's hand first, but a number of individuals. Do we have any further discussion to make on this item? Hearing none, if you'd like to vote in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Peters, would you present our next plat for review?
Sure. The second plat is a public hearing on the amended preliminary plat of the SunWest Village Edition. Staff has reviewed this one and recommends just a straight approval.
Excellent, thank you. We will open the public hearing on this item. We do not have any representatives or individuals from the public registered to speak. Are there any additional questions for city staff? We will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion on this agenda item?
I'll motion we approve based on staff recommendation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion for approval by Mr. Cole, a second by Mr. Smith. Is there any further discussion? If you would like to vote in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All right, motion passes unanimously. We will move on to our zoning applications. In the case of Z-21-40, what is the recommendation of city staff? Thank you. We will now open the public hearing. We do not have any public speakers scheduled. Do we have any questions for city staff? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval from city staff. Do we have any motions on this agenda item?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, based upon staff finding, I recommend a motion for approval.
Second.
I have a motion for approval by Mr. Ramos and a second by Reverend Briscoe. Do we have any additional discussion? Hearing none, if you would like to vote in favor of this item, please, or this motion, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Warden, in the case of Z-21-41, what's the recommendation of city staff? Thank you. We will now open our public hearing on this item. We have 0 public speakers scheduled. Do we have any additional questions for city staff? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval from staff. Do we have any motions on this item?
I'd like to make a motion to approve based on staff findings.
Second.
All right, we have a motion of approval by Reverend Briscoe, second by Mr. Vickers. Do we have any additional discussion on this item? If you would like to vote in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. If you would like to vote in opposition to this item, please raise your hand. All right, that's a vote of 8-3 by my count. Motion passes. 8, in favor, 3 in opposition, just for the record. And in the case of Z-21-42, Ms. Wharton, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Carly Linehan on behalf of Skyway Holdings LLC for property at 1029 North Loop Drive for a special permit for a contractor shop in a C3 district. We mailed out 29 notices, had 0 returned, and 1 email was received in opposition to the request. Planning Services recommends approval of the special permit subject to special provisions and conditions and based on the findings required for the granting of a special permit as per section 28-122 of the City of Waco zoning ordinance that were previously read on record.
All righty, thank you. We'll now open our public hearing. We again do not have any public speakers on this item. Are there any questions for city staff? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval. Do we have any motions on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve based on city staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion of approval by Mr. Vickers and a second by Mr. Gretzinger. Is there any discussion on this agenda item before we vote? Hearing none, if you would like to vote in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Moving on to case Z-21-43. Ms. Wharton, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a request, public hearing on a request from Mary Wise and John Calloway on behalf of Mission Waco Mission World, Inc. for property at 2322 and 2324 Gorman Avenue for a special permit to allow transitional shelter 2 in an O3 district. We mailed out 34 notices and had 0 returned for this request. Planning Services recommends approval of the special permit subject to the special provisions and conditions and based on the findings required for the granting of a special permit as per section 28-122 of the City of Waco zoning ordinance that were previously read on record.
Thank you. We will now open our public hearing. We have 2 public speakers scheduled. Ms. Wharton, who do we have to begin with?
First, we'll allow Kathy Wise or Mary Wise to speak.
I'm just here just to answer questions if there's any questions. Thank you all for considering it.
Thank you for joining us. Are there any questions for Ms. Wise? All right. Ms. Wise, thank you for joining us tonight.
And next we have John Calloway.
Mr. Calloway, thank you for joining us. If you could address your public or your comments to the commission.
Thank you for the consideration. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Calloway? All righty. Thank you for joining us this evening. On this item, do we have any final questions for city staff before we close the public hearing? All right, I'll close the public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval from staff. Do we have any motions on this item?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I motion that we recommend approval subject to conditions.
Second.
We have a motion of approval by Mr. Ramos and a second by Mr. Cole. Any further discussion? If you'd like to vote in favor of this item, please raise your hand. All right, motion passes unanimously. That will conclude our agenda items for this evening. Thank y'all for joining us tonight. Staff, thank y'all for coping with technical difficulties as they arose. Meeting adjourned.